I nearly didn't say yes to this job in Bristol, but I'm very glad that I did. We're only a week or so into October, and I've decided I already want to post this vlog because I normally have enough to say about each project that if I want to keep the videos to 10 to 15 minutes long, I can basically include one job and a few talking points to have enough valuable content to share with you guys. In my last video, I talked about being in the first kind of setup stage of my business, and there won't necessarily be a point where I'm suddenly out of that stage and fully operational. It's gradual change, but I'm already noticing I'm entering that second stage where I'm able to be relied on, and at a very basic level, people will know that I can show up and do a good job. But that's kind of just the tip of the iceberg. This job was very last minute. I was working with my good friend Brianna on a series of videos for UE Bristol, which was the university we both went to. This was my first time on their medical campus, where we were going to be shooting a series of short videos that new students would watch when they'd apply to a university course under the blanket of the School of Medicine. I kind of only billed for a half day of my time and my travel, but this was budgeted internally at UE, so it was within everyone's interest to make the shoot run as efficiently as possible. I recorded some POV footage on that GoPro mount that I mentioned in the last video, so while you watch me set up, I'll talk about the broader topic in this video, which is being able to say yes to things and being trustworthy. Now, I think the social skills you have are worth 100 times more than the technical elements of this job. My assumption is that everyone can do the technical stuff. This might be on varying levels, but in terms of what most end clients see, all they need to know is that you can get them a well-lit image with good audio. Being a good person, friendly, reliable, and a great communicator is something that's becoming much rarer. In the world, not just in this industry. In practical terms, or business terms, this might be how you're able to secure a job, but also how you're able to keep contributors relaxed on set. Basically making other people's jobs less stressful so you get called back the next time. On the flip side, this job was very frustrating to say the least. There's very little that me or Brianna could have done differently to make this job run more smoothly. For a start, I billed a half day, but because of contributor availability, this job was spread out over 2 days. Admittedly, 2 very short days, but it meant twice the setup and twice the travel. Obviously, I did stay in Bristol in between, but I might not have had that option. Another downside of this job being so last minute was that none of our contributors were prepared to say what they needed to. The second part of this video will be looking at the amount of investment that running this business has required so far. For me, I would love to have a teleprompter in my kit, but it's one of those purchases that's going to be sitting on the back burner for many months. For this job, the clients had to memorise lines and deliver them down the lens, but if you're not used to being on camera, this can be a very excruciating experience for everyone. I'm just going to pause here to show you our final setup. When you have a big softbox, it's amazing how quickly you can craft a really good looking image. As always, there were 3 main things I was thinking about when setting up for this interview. The first was creating depth by shooting into the corner of the room and leaving space behind the contributor. The next was placing the key light on the same side as the window, or in this case the biggest window, to motivate the light. And then it was just about composition and camera placement. These are things you just kind of get a feeling for, but I think we were shooting around 50mm for this one. You can see here I'd spotted the reflection of the light in the back window. Brianna bought her iPad, so we connected to Sony's monitor and control app, which was great. You'll see it in action on day 2, but having a second portable monitor for your producer and to show the client is invaluable. And Brianna could also see when I was recording, which was another great feature. And this clip just kind of shows the working relationship that Brianna and I have. She sends a few emails and then sits on her phone doing nothing, and I pretend to be doing stuff, but I'm just changing the percentage of the light by like 2%. Anyway, I'm now going to talk about the stage I'm personally at doing these types of jobs and how the business expenses never end. So, as I keep saying, I want to be relied on and trusted to get the job done. That's it. Me being a good communicator remotely and on set is a big bonus on top of that. But on this shoot, there were 2 main lessons I learned. And that's the thing I enjoy most about this job. I can't remember the last time I didn't learn something on a shoot, even if it's just running conventional talking head setups like this one. I hadn't anticipated this problem ahead of the shoot, but the camera showed an overheating warning on both days. That is the obvious downside of the ZV-E1. It is still the cheapest way of getting the same sensor as the FX3 and the FX6 for under £2,000, but it's not a reliable camera. I've reached a stage now where I feel technically competent and able to take on any job similar to this one, but the only thing that could effectively, professionally embarrass me is completely out of my control.
Yeah, this is good. I like this.
Your bag's your stupid bag.
Oh.
Oh. Oh.
I was making it work with this camera. I have an external fan by Ulanzi that lets me monitor the temperature of my camera and has 2 fan modes. I've shot multiple successful long-form projects on this camera, featuring interviews over 45 minutes long. But as I transition from the setup stage of my business, this feels like the one thing that's limiting me. In essence, this is the core of my business. My camera is the brain of every project, my most expensive piece of kit. So to have a camera that is just enough isn't going to cut it. I've heard other creators talk about the path of least resistance, mainly when talking about the end client, but the same applies to running your own business. In the same way you want the experience of working with you to be seamless, you want your experience of working, in effect, working for yourself, to be the same. That's why I've invested so many hours into refining my travel setup. And the timing for this couldn't be better. I'm selling my camera to my friend Charlie. We met for coffee last week and it turns out he was also looking to upgrade. For the type of work he does, the ZV-E1 is honestly a perfect choice of camera for him. So, a win-win. I make back some of the money sunk into this new investment and Charlie gets a good deal. I'm selling it to him for about 150 under what second-hand retailers are asking for it and throwing in this tilter cage for free. It's really weird to part so suddenly with the tool that you've sworn by and has given you such a return on investment over the last few years, but this situation could be a whole lot worse. The quote I received from Wex Photo Video and MPB was a little over £1,000. I paid $1,800 for this camera originally, so I get back nearly half of what I originally paid for it. Instead, I'm only down about £300 total, which I will take, having shot so many projects on this camera over the years. I do feel bad for Charlie though, who's now going to get sucked into the world of full frame lenses and expensive SD cards. You can't say I didn't warn him though. I'll probably talk about the new camera I'm upgrading to in my next vlog, but for now we're on to day 2 of the shoot at Glenside campus. The clips we were shooting were for a platform called Kira, which is an interactive admission site where applicants for higher education courses have to submit video responses.
Oh my god, bro. Take my picture, take my picture.
This was the first of 3 spaces that we went to before we found the room that we finally started shooting in. Again, it's just because no one had time to make this project happen. There's no other factor that came into play here. Everyone needed more time. After about an hour of looking for a space, I actually suggested this room myself, as I'd spotted it on the way to the toilet. Yes, it was a smaller room, but it was quiet, had no aircon, 2 big windows and house lights that we could turn off, which were all problems that we had in the other spaces that we were shown to. And then it was onto a similar setup from the day before. We found these plants to decorate the background with, and I thought the windows had a lot of character, and they meant I was able to motivate the light source. I did end up moving it to the other side in our later setups. I find myself actually tweaking things constantly from when we first start recording, the more I stare at the same frame. And you can see how useful that second monitor is. It means I get a nice big screen and Brianna doesn't have to extend her neck or sit in a weird position, so everyone stays nice and relaxed. The other big learning point on this job was that I needed to wise up about audio recording. Lav mics are so much easier for me working as a travelling filmmaker. Obviously the ideal might be a shotgun mic boomed in, but that would mean bringing even more kit. Lav mics are inherently awkward though, as you have to basically direct the contributor as to where to place it. But I usually get pretty good results. I normally boost the treble frequencies in post to stop it sounding so muffled. I don't think I could ever give up the DJI Mic 2 kit paired with the Sony MI Hot Shoe adapter. It's so effortless with such few wires. Cranky Cameraman showed his approach to miking up talent a couple of videos ago. This is just one of those things that never gets focused on, but is actually one of the few technical priorities when you're shooting interviews, instead of what key light you're using. And he recommended this lav concealer, which helps to keep the mic in place and is much easier to tape down. I might actually pair it with these sticky circles, which have been on my Amazon list for years. I've just been using standard electrical tape, which is definitely the most cost efficient, but I guess at its worst could cause an allergic reaction, or at the least some lost chest hair. This was our final frame on the second day. I was really happy with how this one turned out. You can't see the key light hitting the back wall behind our contributor, so I could have flagged that off, but the white walls actually made for a really nice bounce. It was completely uncontrolled, but doesn't look too bad in the shot. Had it been a much gloomier day, this setup would have looked much less natural. My usual f22 panel setup is almost as easy as using this Aputure lantern, but this light source just emits light like 270 degrees around it. As long as it's vaguely pointed towards the talent, you get a great image. With my f22C, I have to be much more careful. I also normally use lightweight stands, so it was nice to get this one so high, with a sandbag of course. Now I didn't want to make the whole video about this, but with the exception of the guy in this shot and one other, every other participant was completely underprepared. Filming could have been 4 hours total, and should have been, but ended up taking probably 6 or 7. For most of the shoot, Brianna and I felt like the most professional people in the room, which isn't the worst feeling, but I wish they'd all brought a little bit more respect and focus to the shoot. We probably shot for 20 minutes with the gentleman in this shot, and 40 minutes to an hour with the rest. That being said, it's absolutely the responsibility of the end client to ensure participants are prepared for a job like this, and I know most out of anyone that being on camera is not easy. But I've had shoots that were a lot harder, and it was generally a pretty enjoyable experience, and great practice, again, shooting in a more corporate setting. So that's probably the last shoot with the ZV-E1. It's weird replacing something that's 90% functional. It's just that extra 10% that's stopping me from taking on any job. Going back to the path of least resistance, I really hate having to make so many more decisions before taking on a shoot. The only questions I want to be asking them is, can you pay my day rate? And the only question I should need to ask myself is, do I have space in my calendar? Not, oh, I don't know if I'll be able to record a concert that long, or will I be able to get away with running my camera fan at full speed when the client wants to boom in a mic? Those are both real questions I've asked myself in the last week when deciding if I can say yes to work. Anyway, I mentioned in the last vlog that working by myself has been a very different experience, so it's been really nice on this job working alongside a producer who knows their shit, and it was a lot of fun. On this job, it also meant little to no emails for me and no editing hours. So yeah, it is really feeling like I'm now transitioning out of that first stage of business. I know what I'm doing and I'm set up to do that well. I've established myself as a player in the field. The next stage is to keep working with as many people as I can in as many cities as I can. That's with both end clients and other crew members. So if you're new here and want to introduce yourself in the comments, then I would love to hear from you. And to end off the video about buying too many new toys, this is the intense ending of a bidding war for an Aputure Lightstorm 60X. This light is honestly perfect for my type of work. It's lightweight, can run off a V-mount for hours, and has a built-in Fresnel. I still got it for around £100 to £150 under retail price, and it was basically brand new. I hope to use this light as a backlight for my interviews. I've got an upcoming job featuring 4 interviews in a variety of locations, people's homes and workplaces, so I see that job as the perfect opportunity to shoot some really good looking interviews, which will help me to sell my business in the new year. It's a small thing, but this backlight might be the difference maker to give my work the professional edge. It's also nice to have a much harsher source in my kit, as I can also use it as an accent light on the back walls, or even just to push in even more key light when I'm shooting next to a window on a sunny day. And you can see the Fresnel in action here. This light is nearly 5 years old but is still one of a kind. Not bringing a Fresnel attachment is another thing I don't have to fit in my bag. You can see how focused the beam can get here. And if you set the fan mode to auto or high, you can actually squeeze a lot more output out of this light. I think it becomes a 90 watt light when you do this, which is honestly way brighter than I'll ever need, but it's nice to know that I have that functionality. And you can see me bouncing it into that mirror there. The light you can see hitting my face is the light at 100% at double the distance between me and the mirror, because it has to bounce all the way back. But I'll realistically be using this light at 20 to 30%. I'm excited to use this light in the field for those interviews I have coming up, which I'll share with you in the next vlog.